Welcome to the Yellowbrick Road. I am Jordan, and today this is going to be a long. It's not really a reaction. I've watched most of it, but I just want to watch it again. But you know, I guess people on my YouTube channel will see the video as well. And it's in regards to the actual death toll numbers from Gaza, and I think more importantly, actually, not more importantly, but also like very important is the context of these death tolls and like how they're happening and the spans of time and all that shit. But before I get started, please check out all the links in the description box for donations for charities, or check out the Discord link if you want to join up and talk some shit. Please, by all means. All right, but this is gonna be a long video, so let me just get started. This is Dave DeCamp from Antiwar.com, and he's going to be interviewing Matthew Cockerill. Crazy name. And this guy is like a data PhD, data historian type motherfucker. And when I was listening to this, I was actually blown away by most of this. And off rep, this guy is, as far as I understand, or as far as what he was saying, I'm not saying believe him, but I'm saying like this is what I heard from the guy, is that he's not like some fucking freedom fighter. I just buy into any story because it's dramatic or something like that. Like seems very much a stickler for trying to be correct about the scenario, and he wasn't like gun ho, oh, free Palestine, like crazily like that. As far as I understand, that's where that guy's. He's not coming from that, sense of things. Although I think he's he's half Egyptian. I think he said he was. But once again, that means nothing, right? It's about the individual, and so he's not like some person locked in on this topic from the jump, right? As he I guess investigated it more, he found out like, man, this is actually crazy what's happening. And for me, like I already seen enough video and enough of the movements going on over there where like you can probably tell what's happening. You can probably tell with that. But now we have a guy who's focused more on the, I guess, data portions of what's happening over there. And I think that's worth looking at. So without further ado, let's just get into it. Here is Antiwar.com, Dave DeCamp, and Matthew Cockerill. Here we go.
All right. Welcome to a special episode of Anti-War News. This is the first interview I've done in almost a year. I look back, the last one I did was with Dr. Feroz Sidwa about his experience in Gaza about 9 months ago. And today I'm very happy to be joined by Matthew Cockerill, who is a historian, a PhD student, and a researcher who's done a lot of great work on the Gaza death toll, really getting into the statistics and the numbers, and an important topic that I think we should get into here. So, Matthew, thank you for joining me. How are you doing today?
It's a pleasure to be with you. I'm looking forward to the opportunity to speak with you.
Yeah, I think the first time we spoke, you alerted me to a report from Air Wars that was coming out about the October 2023 Israeli bombing campaign in Gaza, which was particularly brutal. And I saw you've done, again, just kind of digging into the numbers with the health ministry. So we were talking a bit before we started recording, and I mentioned one of the biggest criticisms I get, if I get like a new person, say I'll go do some show and someone will start reading my work or listening to my podcast, is, oh, you use the Gaza Health Ministry, that's Hamas. The Hamas-controlled Gaza Health Ministry, is all the kind of mainstream media outlets call it. So I think it is important to kind of get into, why I believe the conclusion I came to pretty early on is that their numbers are reliable, and if anything, a undercount.
Indeed.
And I know that's the conclusion you came to as well, and you have a lot more analytical experience and everything, so I want to talk about that. But first thing, could you just tell us about your background, how you got into, because I know you peer reviewed that Air Wars study, how you kind of got into digging into these numbers?
Right. So I think I bring a lot to the table analytically that maybe others in this space don't, if I can be slightly immodest for a second, simply because the claims that are being made about historically good ratios, historic discrimination, and so forth. I, as a historian, who knows about military history, of course, can actually have a qualitative understanding of what these claims entail, and can compare the percentage of women and children, for example, killed in Gaza to the Syrian civil war, or Ukraine, or even the Russian campaigns in Chechnya, or the Bosnian genocide, and so forth. And so because of my knowledge of military history, and also because of my knowledge of the Arab world, I'm half Egyptian, so I grew up in a household that was bilingual, actually. Mother and grandparents were Arabic speakers, and dad and I were English speakers, I suppose. But and I lived in the region for a few years, so I think my knowledge of the region, the language, and also military history has given me an analytical edge. And in terms of air wars, the reason I was brought into that, had the opportunity to help peer review it before they released it, was Mike Spaggett, who's a co-author of mine and is a distinguished world-class academic, economist, Harvard PhD. He's at the Royal Holloway University of London, and he's one of the foremost world experts on casualty counting in war. And he read my analysis of the Israeli claims of a 1-to-1 ratio in Gaza, my debunking of that. He liked the work, and this led to a relationship between me and Mike. So
what he's talking about there is, when he says 1-to-1 ratio, he means like actual military people, like Hamas, enemy combatants, whatever you want to call them, in ratio to the civilians being killed. So he's saying, like, okay, Israel's claiming that for every death of one Hamas person, it's just one civilian dying, which I think would be considered, like, I guess, average for a war. It sounds horrendous anyways, but I think that's what he's talking about with the 1-to-1 ratio. All right, here we go.
In terms of the Air Wars study, Mike is what brought me into that. And the Air Wars study was utterly shocking. It showed two things in tandem with the Gaza Ministry of Health data. It shows that the number of civilians killed in October 2023 is the highest in a month of bombing for any war, at least that I can find. I've looked exhaustively at this. Worse than Operation Linebacker 2, for example, in Vietnam. Worse, I believe, than any month of the bombing of Cambodia, which killed 50 to 150,000 people between 1969, civilians, and 1969, 1973. I think it's the worst since the Korean War of any month of bombing. So the Air Wars study was shocking to me. And it also gave a lot of insights as to how people are being killed. So about 90% of the women and children that Air Wars found, again, of this historic figure of thousands and thousands of people killed in October 2023 bombing, that 90% of the women and children killed in October 2023 were killed in non-militarized, so there's no military activity taking place, residential areas, like direct airstrikes on residential areas. So this was all, to me, very shocking, and is one of the reasons that I concluded that this is, in fact, a major atrocity of this century.
Yeah, I mean, that is a pretty staggering statistic, that it was the deadliest month of bombing since the Korean War, you said, that you could find?
Correct. Yes. Worse than any month of Vietnam. Like, again, in terms of the largest number of munitions dropped, on a per capita, if you will, basis, the Linebacker 2, it would be Linebacker 2 in the Vietnam War. But if you look at Linebacker 2, the number of people killed, even according to the North Vietnamese estimates, and again adjusted for time, because Linebacker 2 was 12 days, not a full month, but it's fewer than were killed in Gaza in October 2023. So yeah, it's shocking and remarkable. And I don't think the Israeli claims, I mean, you guys are, you're founded, we talked about, you're founded by Rothbardians. You guys are very principled, but not exactly in the political mainstream. But I think even the political mainstream, people who don't typically engage in as hard-hitting anti-war discourse as you guys do, I think even the political mainstream is not going to be able to deny that this is an atrocity forever. I mean, you're.
Yeah, and that's the thing I keep trying to tell people, is like, I don't think people realize, like, it's happening in your lifetime. This is not black and white footage from the fucking 40s or 20s. This is in your lifetime. Like and it is insanity. And I think it's going to get more insane the more we find out, to be honest with you. And that's something that the Tony Aguilar guy, the food aid distribution, he was a kind of like a security or mercenary for that shit. And he's whistleblowing now. He's saying, like, yeah, once we start getting footage inside of Gaza City, it's going to be something where, and then if an occupation happens, it's going to be some shit that for people in the modern era not used to seeing. Now, have tragedies like this happened anywhere in the world? Yes, of course. But has the internet been, like, locked in on it? No. That's why this is going to be world-changing, in a way. It's going to be shocking. But, all right, here we go.
Mainstream is not going to be able to deny that this is an atrocity forever. I mean, you're seeing in the United Kingdom, for example, elites are moving in the right direction. There was a fellow I was meeting with the other day. I'm not gonna say his name, but he knows David Lammy. He was the Foreign Secretary of Britain. He's kind of a, he was interested in my work. He's kind of a British foreign policy elite. I'm sure you'd hate his views on the Ukraine war, which I'm much more sympathetic to. Not trying to ruin my vision with your audience, but we have a heartfelt disagreement on that. But anyway, he was very open to the claim that they're killing civilians intentionally. And we're talking, this is the kind of guy Scott Horton would hate, right? This is a white-shoed foreign policy elite, and he's open to this. So like, it's I think the numbers are so shocking, and how people are being killed in the large majority of cases has nothing to do with human shielding. Like, as I say, in October 2023, women and children were in the overwhelming majority of cases killed not because Hamas is firing rockets out of a residential area and then Israel bombs the people firing the rockets and kills civilians there. No, they just were bombing homes over and over again, where there may have been one militant. There usually wasn't, by the way. Or there may have been one junior militant, but they just killed the whole family over and over again. So I don't think that these atrocities are going to be able to be covered up forever.
Yeah, and I want to get into that, like the "Where's Daddy" thing, and them bombing them in their homes purposely. But first, you mentioned you did
I believe the "Where's Daddy" thing is like the dad's a soldier or something. Maybe the dad's in Hamas or he's an enemy combatant, right? And then he, because he's there, you blow up the building because he's in there, right? And then that's why civilians get killed, because a Hamas guy is there, right? I think that's what that means. But here we go.
These are going to be able to be covered up forever.
Yeah, and I want to get into that, like the "Where's Daddy" thing, and them bombing them in their homes purposely. But first, you mentioned you did a study, and this is a claim that I hear, and this is a claim that I think is almost too absurd at times to even like have to confront. This idea that the Gaza, Israeli military operations in Gaza, it's like the lowest civilian to combatant casualty rate in the history of urban warfare. And this is pushed by this guy, John Spencer.
Yes.
And I see people repeat it, kind of just like regular people. I haven't seen them say it in a while. It seems like that talking point's, kind of gone away a bit. But this was something, so could you explain to me why that is so absurd and how how John Spencer tries to justify this?
Yeah, so Spencer, and one of the reasons, there's many reasons we could talk about, but one of the reasons Spencer is a charlatan in again, he served in the military. I'm sure he knows a trillion times more about like the tactics. Like he teaches, I think, the tactics of urban warfare than I do as someone who never served the military. But he doesn't know anything about military history. If he did know anything about military history, he wouldn't have repeated the absurd claim that the average, it's a popular myth. Like bureaucrats have repeated this at the UN and the EU, so maybe he got it from them. But if you know military history, this claim he made, which is that the average ratio of civilians to combatants killed in war is 9-1, or 8-1 is an absurdity. Stalingrad and Leningrad, genocidal urban warfare by the Nazis who were deliberately killing the civilian population. They wanted to raise the cities, starve out the population. They did it on purpose. The ratio of civilians to combatants killed in Leningrad and Stalingrad was far below 9-1, right? Hiroshima, where there was actually obviously just murder, right? Totally indiscriminate, but there was a lot of soldiers stationed there. Hiroshima was not that much higher than 9-1. Probably was a little higher, but not too much higher. So the claim that 9-1 is average.
That's fucking insane. Where we dropped the fucking bomb at Hiroshima, or Hiroshima, wherever the fuck you say it. It's only slightly higher than the civilian to soldier casualty in Gaza, like only slightly higher. That is incredible. Fucking incredible. Here we go. I mean, in our world, man. In our fucking lifetimes. Here we go.
Totally indiscriminate, but there was a lot of soldiers stationed there. Hiroshima was not that much higher than 9-1. Probably was a little higher, but not too much higher. So the claim that 9-1 is average is absurd. And Spencer uses this claim that 9-1 is average to try to make Israel look better in comparison. So he claims falsely, which we can get into, Israel has a 1-1 ratio, and this is supposedly sterling compared to the average of 9-1. But it's just a bogus popular myth. Mike Spagat, again, the gentleman I mentioned, has shown by posting data from the Opsala conflict database, which is really the best data we have of all wartime fatalities. I think between 1989 and 2017, they have records for, and the average ratio is about 1-1. And in urban warfare, it varies from about 1-1 to 2.5-1, depending on type. So whether it's a capital or how big the city is, and so on. So it's made up. It shows a lack of. It shows that the guy has not. Netanyahu claims that he always cites Spencer, and he claims Spencer has studied every war. And first of all, nobody has studied no historian has studied every urban war in history. That's absurd, right? But second of all, it shows he hasn't studied like World War II or Vietnam or Korea, right? These horrible wars. Where you had all sides in the case of World War II killing civilians deliberately, right? Far below 9-1. So it's a popular myth, and he uses that to claim Israel's really great in comparison, and then on top of that, he lies about Israel's ratio of civilians to combatants killed.
Yeah. So just to clarify for people, so this guy John Spencer claims that the average urban warfare like civilian dead to combatant dead ratio is 9-1, which of course is just a huge ratio. So now that gets into the question, and I know you've also done some work on this, but maybe let's just get into kind of the where's daddy stuff now, because it connects to the October 2023 bombing. I mean, this idea that of a low-level Hamas militant, or I believe even in some cases, and especially since they broke the ceasefire, they do this with civilian officials.
Yes, they've done it with journalists too. I mean, they did it. They did a Where's Daddy with I don't know if you remember the fellow Rifat. I'm looking for his last name. Yes, he's a famous Palestinian poet. I'll look up his last name so I can pronounce it correctly.
So just the Where's Daddy.
Rifat el-Arair, I guess. I don't know his last name. He was the specific apartment building, the room where he and his family was bombed, and he was killed. I think he was targeted. I haven't confirmed this yet, but I don't think they thought he was a militant even. I think that they targeted him because of his tweet about, I don't know if you remember this, but he tweeted about, he was ridiculing the atrocity propaganda about October 7th, where they baked a baby in an oven. And he said powder, I think they Where's Daddied him because of that. So Where's Daddy program, though, is nobody has ever done this in the history of war, where militaries, including the United States, have, if they identify a high-level target, they have bombed the homes of high-level targets and killed the whole family. So I'm not saying we haven't done that, but nobody has ever done that systematically, where for a junior militant, you are systematically killing them by bombing them in their home while they're sleeping. And again, as you say, this extended to civilians too, who are working for Hamas, like a member of the Politburo. That's like the equivalent of a member of a Knesset. Would people accept if a member of the Knesset, even a genocidal one, was bombed to death in his home and killed the whole family with him? So, yeah, this is one of the biggest killers in the war, and it also debunks the human shields claim, because there's no sane person could characterize this as a human shield situation where a guy who's off duty, who fights for Hamas, even in the case that they are targeting militants, is at home with his family sleeping, and you kill everybody in the home. There's no human shield scenario. So for me, Where's Daddy was very important, because it showed me that, well, the kind of their last refuge of Israel, which I was open to, right? Because I hadn't, when you don't know, when you're in the fog of war, you're open to how are all these people dying, right? Their last refuge is this human shields argument, that they're dying because Hamas is embedding among civilians so systematically that whenever Israel kills Hamas guys, it's in the midst of all these people, and they have to kill them this way because there's a firefight going on. They're shooting rockets, right? And the people in the area get killed. No, they're just bombing people to death in their homes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
so there, I mean, yeah. Sometimes I'm watching this. I'm just like getting like locked in, because it's just like you're just hearing all this information, like holy fucking shit. But it supports kind of the argument where I was going with all of this, where there is no actual excuse for what's happening. There is none. And when I told people, like, yo, I think it's too late for Gazans, like, they're fucked. It's too late for them, because look at all the things this guy's describing, and Dave DeCamp are describing. And it's like, there's no, like, who's there to stop that? I mean, hey, I understand the Trump guys that are like, oh my God, he's betraying us on Epstein. I understand that, but this is such an atrocity. I don't think people really, doesn't really hit them in the fucking mind like it probably should, of like what's happening here. And no, this is not a scenario where your government's uninvolved, their money's uninvolved, like, or your taxpayer dollars are not involved. Like, no. And not really in your name, but in a way, in your name, they are doing this shit. You're telling me the U.S. doesn't have intel to know these things? Of course they do. They know what the fuck is going on. They're allowing it to happen anyways. Like, truly, they're allowing it to happen. So, even for dumb fucks like, what's his name? Matt, the fucking Daily Wire guy, Matt Walsh, right? Even for guys like that, where it's like, oh, I just want America out of this. Yo, fight your own wars, leave America out of this. I don't think you realize what's happening here. Like, if we took the same scenario, but it was strictly, although there are Christians being killed over there, let's say it was strictly, deliberately Christian people being massacred like this, from children to grandpas, being murdered en masse like this, what the fuck do you think that guy's going to be saying or doing? That's what I'm saying. Like, that's that's why I don't take these people as credible. Matt Walsh is not a credible fucking voice on anything I've heard him say. Just being honest. And there's a bunch of people like that in a way are telling you to turn your brains off. Well, it's not our war. Turn your brain off. Like, you don't realize what the fuck is happening. They're, like, actually exterminating people with your country's bombs. They're doing it. Let's get back to it. Here we go. Like, this would be more of me ranting. What do I say? There's not much to say. We're just hearing information. I can try to clarify certain terms we're using here or there, but I'm not really, like, honest to God, watch the fucking video. Here we go.
Area get killed. No, they're just bombing people to death in their homes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. The other big killer is these.
Sorry, real quick. Once again, I personally can't confirm everything he's saying. I need that to be stated, not for the sake of protecting my own ass, but for the sake of truth, right? But what he's saying in the and how he's saying it sounds legit to me. And you know what? Hey, if someone's like, oh no, this guy's lying, I say then the correct answer would be like, okay, let's stop what's happening and investigate it. Let's see what happens then. Have your government, who is, let's be real, funding the fucking genocide, they're funding it and arming it, which means they have say to stop it and say, okay, guys, stop. We're going to investigate these claims that are being made. We're going to investigate every fucking name that has been brought up in regards to dying or missing. We'll investigate every square inch of this motherfucker to find out what's happening. That's what you should be begging for, honestly. But something tells me that the Trump administration or the Biden administration, no, they can't do that. Because if they actually investigate it and shared their results with the world, oh my dear Lord. What have you, like, Americans would be like, what the fuck have you been hiding behind our backs? I mean, I kid you not. Nazi-like shit is happening there. Holocaust, terminating people, shit is happening over there. Now imagine there's Nazi-like shit happening, like Holocaust shit happening, and your government supports it. What do you think the criminal's going to do at that point? They're going to hide that they're helping the shit happen. Like, hey guys, you want some Ford cars? All right? You want some IBM technology? Well, guess what? We're going to have to hide the fact that these motherfuckers were helping Nazis while they were doing the Holocaust. Helping them out. The little numbers on Jewish people's arms and shit like that, like serial numbers to keep track of them, IBM computer systems in 1940 something. No joke. Now, if the government gets on TV and tells the entire world that, the U.S. will be like, the population, the regular people of the U.S. be like, yo, fuck you, IBM. So if the U.S. government goes and tells you, like, well, you have Microsoft over there, you got Palantir, you got IBM again, a part of these atrocities, and then the U.S. government themselves, with military equipment and finances. They're not going to rat on themselves. They're a part of the crime. If you want to get on a podium like a Nick Fuentes type or a Candace Owens and say, Israel, they're acting like Nazis, you better say the U.S. government is acting like Nazis too. If you're going to call Netanyahu a Nazi, you better call Trump a Nazi too. And Biden, by the way. You better call all three of those fools fucking Nazis too. I'm just saying. But let's keep playing.
People to death in their homes, right? Mm-hmm. And the other big killer is these free fire zones. So the Israelis, what they do is they issue evacuation orders, right? So we can talk about that, arguments people give for how that is exonerating to Israel and why I don't buy that at all. But how the Israelis have operated in this war is they issue evacuation orders to a whole city, a whole huge area. And then, if the people don't evacuate, once the IDF comes in, they just shoot everybody they see. And some commanders will not shoot prepubescent children and women, and others do. Like Yehuda Vosh, who's who leads a whole division in Gaza. So we're talking like 10,000 combat soldiers. He has a policy of shooting all women because they could be men in disguise. This is reported in Haaretz in December 2024 by Yaniv Kubovich, right? So the way they operate essentially is anyone they encounter, they do issue evacuation orders, but anyone they encounter after that, they just kill, basically. Mm-hmm. If you're in a zone that they tell you to evacuate. So these are the two main ways they're killing people, according to my research. They're killing people through the Where's Daddy program, and they're killing people through these kill zones.
Yeah, and I think it's clear that the Where's Daddy program, like, it's intentional. They're intentionally killing the families. Like, it's not like they're just targeting these guys in their homes so they could kill them. I think it's clear that it's part of the strategy because, one example I could think of recently Israel bombed a cafe in Gaza City on the beach, which was one of the last refuges for, like, journalists would go there where they could get connected to the internet. And at the time, there was children, women inside the cafe, and Israel bombed it. And I forget exactly the number of people who were killed, but I believe it was at least a dozen. And the claim was, oh, there was a Hamas guy there. Mm-hmm. Well, if you knew he was there, like, couldn't you wait till he left and hit him with a drone strike? And
right.
We also saw this. There was a group of women and children, very young children, waiting outside of a medical center run by a U.S. charity, and they were bombed and torn to pieces. And I believe about 10 women and children were killed. And if you look at, there was actually CCTV video that showed there was two guys walking on the street that were directly targeted, and it was almost like they waited for them to get in front of that group of women and children. And there's no evidence that, both from the video of them walking and from the aftermath of their bodies, that they didn't have any weapons on them or anything. So yeah, I think it's pretty clear that they're intentionally killing.
I mean, look at the killing of Anas al-Sharif, right? Just the other day. I mean, I'm actually right now. I'm going to hopefully be publishing this for Action on Armed Violence, a nonprofit I've written for. But Anas, like, I found a video where he. All
right, that's the Al Jazeera journalist, I believe. I believe that's who he's talking about. Here we go.
Hey, I mean, I'm actually right now. I'm going to hopefully be publishing this for Action on Armed Violence, a nonprofit I've written for. But Anas, like, I found a video where he, before he's killed, is vilifying Hamas. Right? He's ridiculing them. He's saying, your negotiations aren't sincere, and he even says at one point, you should give yourselves up. If you should consider giving yourselves up and the hostages up. So yeah, he may have been pro-October 7th at the time. I don't know whether he was or not, right? But he certainly was not a member of Hamas, and they're lying about this and killing civilians intentionally. And with regard to all of these things, whether it's the order of Yehuda Vash, the commander of Division 252, that all women are men in disguise and you can kill them, whether it's the blocking of all food imports for 2.5 months, whether it's Where's Daddy, where you're gonna kill entire families systematically to get, like, targets of trivial or zero, in the case of civilians, military value. All of these, to me, are better interpreted as cover stories for killing civilians than they are the genuine pursuit of a military target. You can always come up with a security rationale, and genocidal regimes have done that historically, right? You can, the most extreme case, I'll be politically incorrect for a moment, the most extreme case is Heinrich Himmler in the Posen speech, where he said, well, we had to kill the Jewish children for security reasons because they'll grow up to be a security risk just because they'll want revenge on the Germans. So even in the case of the most extreme genocide in human history, the Nazi Holocaust, they had some half-baked security excuse. So the fact that people can characterize this as having a security rationale, to me, is not a compelling argument. You just have to look at the way the arrow is pointed, and also look at stated policy. They want the Palestinians out of Gaza. It's very clear. There is active negotiations with Israeli officials right now in the government of South Sudan to try to take in the Palestinians. Netanyahu in March.
When I first heard this, I did not even hear of that shit when I first watched this video. So that's good. They're having discussions with Sudan to send Palestinians there. Oh my god. God. That one I'm gonna look into on my own time, but I think you should too. But here we go.
Was pointed, and also look at stated policy. They want the Palestinians out of Gaza. It's very clear. There is active negotiations with Israeli officials right now in the government of South Sudan to try to take in the Palestinians. Netanyahu in March was quoted by the Times of Israel. I'll get the specific quote. May of 2025, saying, and I'm reading right now, Israel is destroying homes in Gaza so Palestinians have nowhere else to go but outside the strip. So they're destroying infrastructure intentionally, and they engage in genocidal rhetoric recreationally, right? This government does. Mm-hmm. So, it's in terms of the percentage of the population killed, in terms of the percentage of those killed are women and children. worst war of the century, worse since the Rwandan genocide. You have genocidal rhetoric all throughout the government, never punished. There's clear aim of ethnic cleansing. The public appears to have genocidal views. It's all over the television. It just, to me at least, the explanation that they're purposely killing civilians is much more persuasive than, they blocked the food imports because Hamas loots it, systematically, which they don't, right?
So once again, they talk, like in Israel, their politicians talk to them differently than when they try to broadcast something over here. Or like, do like an interview with Fox News or something and try to speak to, like Netanyahu does like an interview with U.S. media groups, and he speaks in English, right? And he says something to America and the West in general. The rhetoric is much different from what I've seen. They're a lot more reckless over there. But that shit doesn't get coverage over here. So people don't realize, or a lot of people don't know that these fools are saying straight up genocidal, Nazi-like shit on their news channels over there. Like straight up. Maybe because it's more acceptable, right? But yeah, they definitely bullshit us over here. They circle jerk when they come over here, bro, and say things. It's to make themselves look like victims when they're actually causing massive amounts of harm to other people. But here we go.
Or they, then why'd they block the insulin shots from coming in? Like, is Hamas all diabetics, or are they making money off of selling insulin? So no, it's I think that these things are purposely killing civilians. And this is not unprecedented history at all. Like the siege of these cover stories, the siege of Sarajevo. The tribunal, which dealt with the war criminals in the former Yugoslavia, found that they had these cover stories for killing civilians to intentionally try to provoke a flight. So this wouldn't be some kind of novelty or conspiracy or anything like that. This happens in history. So
yeah, I want to hit on something you mentioned. You said, and I've seen you say this before, that when it comes to the percentage of women and children killed, this is the highest you've seen since the Rwandan genocide. I mean,
Correct,
that seems like a pretty significant fact. And
Yeah.
I know recently, so for a long time, it was just over 50% were women and children. And
Right.
recently we saw a drop in that because of the aid massacres, because of the people
Correct.
getting killed and going out to get aid. And obviously it's the men who are going to go do that. But
This points to something very important, Dave, it will actually kind of be an educational opportunity for your viewers, perhaps. So in war, obviously women who are killed are more likely to be civilians than men who are killed, obviously. But if you look at the raw number of civilians killed, men are actually overrepresented. Now, if you're listening to this, re-listen to it if it doesn't make sense, because it does. Those are different claims. You'll expect a larger raw number of adult male civilians to be killed than children or women, because, as you say, even when they're civilians, even when they're not engaged in combat, men are more likely to run risks, to leave their home seeking aid, as in this case, to be out and about and get caught up in crossfire. So this is one of the reasons why it's so utterly shocking that for most of this war, a majority of fatalities have been women and children. It's still, something like 45%. And just as a comparison, if you look at the Syria network has good data on fatalities during the Syrian civil war, right? I mean, it's over 80% of civilian fatalities are adult men, right? And far over 80% of the total will be adult men. Iraq, according to Iraq body count, well over 80% of civilians killed are adult men. If you look at the total percentage, it'll be over 90% of people violently killed in the war, meaning killed like in combat or whatever, or killed by militaries, will be adult men. So this is extremely uncommon. In fact, has not happened since the Rwandan genocide. Such a high percentage of the overall kills being women and children. And the biggest reason for it is the Where's Daddy program. Because if you're killing families systematically, well, which they are, by bombing homes systematically full of families and with no soldiers in them other than one guy maybe, right? Because it's not like they've militarized the home and they're shooting rockets at it. No, it's just one guy's in there. You're going to kill women and children at an outrageous rate.
remember I did a video already where Netanyahu was saying every single house has booby traps in it. That's why they had to blow it up and then level it. So they are saying every house is a part of the war zone in Gaza. Every house is a part of the fucking war zone, according to them. Every house is a enemy combatant, hideout, essentially. All right? And Douglas Murray was saying something very similar way back when he debated Dave Smith. But let's continue.
If you're systematically, it's because they're systematically bombing homes. That's why. That's why they've reached this statistical anomaly. Because, look, Assadist forces in Syria, they definitely killed civilians intentionally in Aleppo and elsewhere. But they killed. If you look overall, like Hezbollah and other militant groups, over 80% of the people they killed were adult men. Right. And so it's just nobody's ever done this where you're just going, okay, we're going to go from home to home, or we find someone we think has a Hamas affiliation. We're going to bomb them and kill the whole family. Do this systematically. No military has ever done this. The only time you do it is if it's a target of really high value. And really, morally speaking, it should make anyone uncomfortable, even in that case. But nobody's ever done this systematically.
Yeah,
this is the first time.
Yeah, what's up, Laura?
The incredible thing is that the talking point we see, and I remember John Kirby, who was the spokesman for the White House National Security Council under Biden. They're all the supporters of Israel always say, "Oh, Israel's the most moral army in the world." And John Kirby at one point, he said, "Oh, Israel's taking all these steps to protect civilians. Even our own military wouldn't do that." So he's like smearing the American military to defend these atrocities that
and just to be,
but Dave, no, that was the lesser evil administration. That was the lesser evil. What are we talking about, Dave? These guys are stupid. They don't get it. Those guys were the lesser evil. They're less harmful. Come on, guys. Wake up, man. The fucking Biden administration. They're so fucking they're less evil than the other guys. Imagine making arguments for shit like that. Fucking fuck. Less evil, man. Here we go. Stupid.
Clear.
Dummies.
If you look at violent fatalities, like the Brown University has a project, and I think they use Iraq body count data among other data, but they have a project of the Cost of War Institute. If you look at the number of civilians violently killed in Iraq across both wars, across the Second Iraq War and also the campaign against ISIS, about 200,000. And the large majority of those were not killed by the coalition. They were killed by, frankly, the insurgents, people they were fighting, or ISIS later. And then Afghanistan, the total number of civilians violently killed is going to be lower than what Israel's killed in Gaza. So there isn't a comparison. And look, Iraq was completely unjust. If you want me to vilify the Iraq War, I'd be happy to do that. It's kind of conventional wisdom at this point. And Antiwar.com and you guys deserve credit for having opposed it when it wasn't conventional wisdom, right? But nevertheless, you didn't see anything like these rules of engagement. You didn't see anything like "Where's Daddy?" You didn't see free fire zones at a systematic level. You also didn't see the government, like George W. Bush wasn't calling Iraqis or Afghans human beasts or talking about destroying Iraq. Yeah, no, it's not. It's not you can be as anti-war as you want. You should be anti-war when it comes to Iraq. Any sane person should be, but it's not a serious comparison. Also, you have to look too that there were far more firefights in Iraq. The people that the United States was fighting, even ISIS, had much better munitions, right? So there's more opportunity for collateral damage when there are far more firefights. So. And if you look at the percentages killed, it's nothing compared to Gaza. I mean, Gaza is the highest percentage. It's something we could talk about my estimates, but I assess it's about 4 to 5% of the pre-war population has been killed. Again, there's nothing like this all century. Syria is 3% over nearly 14 years. Gaza's 4 to 5 in 22 months. I mean, it's really unbelievable. I was not pro-Israel, right? I mean, you wouldn't really expect it given my connection to the Arab world. But I didn't. I actually would have been open to the idea that, Israel has a lot of human rights problems, but they can be exaggerated. And I mean, people like Chomsky and Finkelstein were basically correct. all along, or they've completely lost their minds. It's one of the two. I mean, this is unbelievable what they're doing. And part of the reason which is, kind of like a, pretty liberal, boring establishment hack future like think tank employee 2 years ago, part of why I've been so radicalized is it's like, well, clearly like my theories of how foreign policy works aren't adequate if the West can be like sponsoring this, right? And if our intellectuals are defending it, I mean, and it makes one want to look at history and say, what did I get wrong? Because I would not have seen this coming. Anything like this, it's unbelievable, really.
Yeah, I think.
So, as I said before, I guess he considered himself more of the establishment idea, or kind of the mainstream, quote unquote, intellectual side of things. But yeah, shit changes when you see, when you, I guess, witness certain things, or even hear about certain things. But yeah, it did that the population decrease percentage from death like that, and I think that number is probably higher than what we're counting because of all the undocumented deaths that are happening, right? But okay, here we go.
A lot of people
just, by the way, those are not smart people. Those are not intellectuals. Anyone who buys in it, who says, well, this war, what's happening here is justified. Anyone like that is not an intellectual. They're full of shit. Either brainwashed, which means you're kind of dumb if you get brainwashed, or devil worshipping motherfucker, which means you're a dumb fuck. Forgive me, that's my emotions talking. You know what? I support my emotions talking, in moments like this. But here we go.
Anything like this, it's unbelievable, really.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are, having that moment. And, we really see this in the U.S., especially like people that were always generally pro-Israel. I mean, it's become too, what's happening in Gaza is just too much to kind of ignore or just accept and say, that's just part of our foreign policy. We support Israel. Well, when you see the images of starvation and all these atrocities.
Yeah.
So I want to get more into the genocide. But first, actually, I want to touch on the numbers, because when you're talking about, 45%, 50% of women and children killed, you are citing the Gaza Health Ministry data, which I believe now is around 62,000 they're saying are killed.
Something like that.
Very important.
Yeah, over 60,000, yeah.
If you could just tell me quick why you trust those numbers and what you think the actual violent death toll.
Yeah, I mean, not only do I trust numbers, I'll just say this, like having said this extensively, the numbers are correct. There might be errors, a few errors, but not at a high scale. Like I've looked at this backwards and forwards. These are reliable. And now the serious viewer is going to ask, so why do you say that? Well, there are a number of reasons. The first reason is historical accuracy. This doesn't prove, of course, that they're accurate this time around, but it should give us a kind of a priori assumption that they will be until we look at the other data, right? Because if you look at Operation Cast Lead and Protective Edge, for example, the two big Israeli wars in Gaza before October 7th, recent ones, the number of fatalities and the demographic profile fatalities the Ministry of Health reports is essentially the same as B'Tselem, the United Nations, and Human Rights Watch and other groups that did estimates for one or both conflicts. So, right, historically is a big reason. The other reason, well, there are many reasons. The other biggest reason is that the Ministry of Health is extremely transparent. Contrary to the propaganda about, they're a Hamas propaganda outfit, they publish for every name, virtually every, and at this point it's over 99% have all these data. They publish name, full Arabic name. So there's 4 names, like a name of the father, grandfather, and family name, and of course the person's name. They have this for basically everybody on their list of the 62,000 or however, whatever the precise number is right now. They publish age, sex. It's Gaza, so we have just men and women, no other categories. But men and women for each person. And they also published Loon algorithm compliant Israel issued ID numbers. So these are like, if the Loon algorithm is basically what your credit card conforms to, and Israel gives these IDs with Loon algorithm compliant numbers to Palestinians in Gaza. And for each of the fatalities, or virtually all of them, the Gaza Ministry of Health provides them. So there's extensive information on each person, and you can check them in open sources. I've done this in a number of cases, and you find that, some people don't have social media, but you find in a very large number of them, Air Wars has done these checks that they are real deaths, the families eulogizing the person, and so on. And then the other thing,
you can read Arabic, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a big help for this kind of
yeah, absolutely. That's one of the reasons I felt like I needed to get involved in this. Like, it was not only like I read Arabic. It was like, what the fuck is going on? Like, how are we condoning this? Is insane. Yeah. And the one thing I was open to is there some mitigating excuse? Like the human shields thing is as bad as their propaganda says. I didn't think that was true, but I thought maybe, who knows? But when I realized that, oh no, they're just bombing homes systematically and killing whole families to kill like a guy who was an ex-militant, a low-level militant, or a civilian who says views they don't like, or a civilian member of the government. Like, no, they're just murdering people.
Yeah, thanks, Microsoft and Palantir, how to find the Hamas combatants and take them out. You imagine that? Like, that's what's happening. Use AI to scan social media and then find these fools and then blow their fucking homes up. And you had, once again, as far as their government's concerned over there with Israel, as far as their government's concerned, any excuse works. Just kill the motherfucker. That's their sense of things. Just kill him. Fuck it. We'll say they're IDF later. I beg you to go look back at. I mean, you can look at my video where it's the 15 medics, and they were Hamas. Then you find out they're not Hamas. It's like, well, we thought they were Hamas, and you find out there's no reason to even think that either. They're like, well, we fired the guy who did that. We fired the commander that told him to go shoot and kill these medics. I beg you to go back and look at that story. Not even my video. Go to my video. You'll see all the fucking sources for it. Read through the fucking things that I put in the description box. Read through the sources. I beg you to. It's that's such a microcosm of what I've seen been happening the entire way with Gaza, as far as what I get to say personally, right? Because I'm not over there. Fuck. But yes, it does appear to be very systematic, and the excuses for why they're allowed to do that are just not there. And I'm telling, I kid you not, I'll say it again. It's basically, the Nazis are doing Nazi shit, but instead it's caught on the internet. Everyone can see it, and your government says, don't worry, we're helping them do it. And if you get in the way, we'll call you anti-Semitic or against American interests. If you're, born in another country, we might try to deport you. If you're a college kid, we might take away your fucking funding for your school because you said something like that. It's wow, you guys are trying to make evil shit happen, and you're gonna try to stop anyone who tries to do the right thing about it. I mean, am I wrong when I keep screaming about devil worshippers? Am I wrong about this? Once again, I don't mean the religious context of it, although it sounds that way. I mean the idea of supporting malice to terraform the earth in your own cunty fucking image. Devil worshipper to me. Fuck. Here we go.
But in terms of I'll give you a couple other reasons. I'll be concise. Two other reasons that I think are important. There are others, but we'll talk about these two really quick. So the Israelis and the Americans, according to what range of public reporting, secretly, not the Americans are open about it, but the Israeli and the American governments secretly regard, in terms of Israel, secretly regard these data as reliable, right? Vice News reported the IDF regards it as reliable. The Economist reported that the IDF did a study on them and found that they're real people. So the Western governments trust this, whatever propaganda they may say publicly. And then finally, they've contradicted Hamas's propaganda. So here's an example. Hamas maintained for many, many months. The Ministry of Health initially maintained this when it was pretty close to true. Like in October 2023, something like 70% or close of fatalities were in this insane, it was all where's daddy. And like something like 70% of fatalities or a little lower were women, children, and elderly. But Hamas has maintained 70% for months and months and months, long after it was true, right? So it was around 52%, of fatalities were women and children, and Hamas's government media office would say 70%. And the Ministry of Health at one point actually publicly said, no, this is incorrect. So they didn't like say Hamas is wrong, but they implicitly contradicted them. They said in an interview with a Sky News journalist that no, 70% is not true, right? So I mean, the fact that they're willing to contradict their own government's propaganda is pretty remarkable, and I think more reason to trust them. So they're telling the truth about the estimate. In fact, though, it is undercounted, as I can get into if you wish.
Yeah. So what was that study that Michael Spaggett, who you've worked with, he did recently? I know Haaretz had coverage of it, and I know there was a similar one published in the Lancet. I forget who did the study, but basically that found, based on those numbers, roughly the violent death toll at this point, and when I say violent, I mean killed by airstrikes or gunfire, shelling, whatever, is probably around 100,000.
I just want to say, Haaretz is an Israeli newspaper, so not everyone over there is buying into this shit. Maybe there's a lot of them, or a majority, but not everyone. And the not everyone is a large enough number for you to not say, like, oh, well, all of Israel is going this direction. Like, no. That's why I shit on people like Candace Owens or Nick Fuentes or these dumb fucks out there that do, like, blanket shit, and you miss out on people that are actually trying to do the right thing. That needs to be known. I know it's very sensational and romantic in a way to feel like, oh, we have the understanding of what pure evil is. Like, no, you fucking don't. People move in certain ways. Like, people are people, dude. You have to leave them room to be people. Not leave them room as like, excuse, bad actions or allow bad actions. But leave room in the sense of people are complicated. They can be like this, or they can be like something else, or a million other different things. That's why this whole thing, like, Israel's doing this, does not work in my worldview. And the more you look at it, like, you realize that it doesn't. It's like, sorry, it doesn't work that way. It's not reality. It's a slogan or a catchphrase that you're caught up into right now. But, who cares? Who cares, right? Let's fall for the same tricks again and again and again and year after year. Fall for it again and again instead of trying to clean shit up in real time. Clean shit up. I mean, in your own psyche, and then express yourself in the world. But apparently, that's too much to ask for. So instead, go get a bumper sticker that says Israel's bad. Go do that instead. Fucking dummies. Sorry, sorry. Everyone's a fucking target at this point, bro. For me, like, you're all getting shit on. Here we go.
Yeah, exactly. So, what Spaggett did, I'll talk about Spaggett's work first, and I'll talk about the excellent Lancet article that you referred to, because there's also a bad Lancet article that some people on our side are citing and is definitely wrong. It's overestimating deaths, but we'll talk about the 100,000 figure, which I think is right. So Mike Spaggett, along with the Palestinian, a famous Palestinian pollster, Khalil Shikaki, and other scholars, commissioned a poll of Gazans, of 10,000 Gazans since 2,000 households, so a remarkably large sample size during the war, during the genocide, I should say. And, they found that, according to these data, violent fatalities in Gaza were about 40% underestimated by the Ministry of Health through January of 2025. And this is a remarkable finding because another analysis by Zaina Jamaluddin and and other scholars in the Lancet, which was based on capture-recapture analysis, which, without getting into the technical aspects of it, they're using multiple sources, right? So they looked at, one thing they looked at is what I looked at, open sources. So basically, like families writing on Facebook, I've lost my child here, and they have a picture of their child and they say, this is what happened and God bless her and we're miserable, right? Or I lost my husband, or I lost my, so they found, using various sources and also hospital records, about a 40% undercount too. So I find it interesting that the two most credible studies that both engage in original research, right? So we're not talking about just analyzing something the Ministry of Health published, but original research found about a 40% undercount by the Ministry of Health. And this makes sense, by the way, that it would be undercounted. The reason it makes sense is because if you look at the Ministry of Health's methods, they're only counting deaths that where either one, they've seen a corpse, so like an employee of the Ministry of Health has seen a body, or two, the family has reported the death and they've completed a judicial process. So, for example, and this relates to my work, the Ministry of Health some months ago removed thousands of fatalities, a few thousand fatalities, from its list. And the people who haven't made one cogent point throughout the war thought that they had finally found one, like people like Eisenberg or Andrew Fox or John Spencer, because they're removing thousands of names, right? Why would they do that? Does it mean that they're not reliable and so on? And I actually went through these, and I found that of the children, I didn't go through all of them, but I went through all the children that had been removed in a couple iterations, which is over 1,000
names.
Yeah, along with my team in Gaza, who deserve far more credit than I do. But we conclude the large majority of these were real deaths, and that the Ministry of Health has removed them because they just don't conform to their criteria. They're just being real sticklers about, you need to have seen a body or you need to have a judicial certificate of death. And yeah, because again, we'd go over and over again on Facebook, we'd see a horrible picture of someone who was killed and it was a removed name, right? A child who had been removed from the list. So the fact that they removed thousands of names from their list that are real fatalities points to their conservatism too. I mean, to me, it's very difficult to square the argument of inflation with removing real fatalities. Rather, I think that they said, oh, these don't conform to our criteria, and they mass removed them. And some of them, there were some that were alive, and so it was like 1%, I think, that I confirmed were alive, and we confirmed, my team rather, were alive and or injured, right? So there were mistakes or missing. There was more missing, I think a couple percent. So I think there were more mistakes in this bunch that they removed because I don't think it hadn't conformed to their criteria. And by the way, I talked to an official.
Before he goes, I mean, I understand the idea of trying to leave no doubt about this scenario. Thus, anything in question, you just say, okay, we're not going to count them as part of the death toll. I absolutely understand that. But the idea is to be like, you can't deny us. You can't deny what we're saying here. I think that's one of the main points, what they're trying to do. So, I think that's, in my opinion, very honorable. But, I mean, I don't know their personalities. I don't know them in person. I'm just saying that would be an honorable thing to do. Granted, if it says 5 people were killed, 5 innocent people were just killed, that should be a worldwide tragedy. But then again, we live on planet Earth, and motherfuckers live in the times they live in, and base their morals off of that shit. Let's be honest. So right now, 5 people dying, it's not a big deal to a lot of people. 5 people died, whatever. When it should be absolute human tragedy. It should be. But we don't do that because we're a bunch of dumb fucks. So here we go. Like, there's people that are actually sitting around counting numbers, most likely. If I had to guess. I think Bernie Sanders is doing that to some degree, right?
Well, I reserved the term genocide for something else.
Excuse me? Is it based on numbers for you, Bernie? Or is it about someone like purposely trying to kill people in mass? Like, come on, man. Here we go.
Missing. There was more missing, I think a couple percent. So I think there were more mistakes in this bunch that they removed because I don't think it hadn't conformed to their criteria. And by the way, I talked to an official at the Ministry of Health recently, just on WhatsApp, and he confirmed my hypothesis was correct, that they removed them because it didn't conform to their criteria, not because that they think that they're fake deaths or whatever. And you may remember when this happened, everyone was saying, "Oh, fake deaths,"
Yeah,
yeah,
I do. And even I'll link to your study on that because I think it's important. But even like if they're inflating the numbers, why would they remove thousands of names?
Right.
Like,
also real deaths. I mean, you could theoretically say they're inflating. And they want to remove the ones that they're going to get caught on or something like that. I don't know. But like, again, I saw with one of the children who was killed and whose name they removed, 10-year-old girl named Sarah.
See how logically
I saw the bullet. I found through social media and family postings. I saw the bullet that was shot into her head by an Israeli drone. Right. I saw her injury. I didn't share, by the way. I posted all of our data to the AOAV article because I believe in transparency as a researcher. So, and of course, there's just been no response to this piece from Fox and Eisenberg, who this was their main exhibit of the Ministry of Health data is fake. And, I found, hey, the large majority of these are real deaths. And I posted all of our findings with links to social media. And, everyone has Google Translate, so you can check this. Anyone can check these. And it wouldn't be difficult to do. Yet, no response. In fact, they still say it discredits them because it shows they made it's even a mistake. They're just being taxonomically consistent, right? Yeah. Which is like, we have certain standards for kind of death. These may be real deaths, but they haven't met them yet, and they will make them because people go through the process.
So I follow because I write like a daily kind of update on the situation in Gaza 5 days a week for Antiwar.com, and I always look at the health ministry's numbers, and I know once in a while they'll say, "Oh, we added, we confirmed 200 other deaths, that we were in the process of confirming," and they added that to the death toll. So it's clear that it's a very meticulous process that they undertake. And as I understand, these are doctors who run the health ministry, correct?
Yeah. Look, they're serious people. I don't want to speak too much for them. I've spoken to one of the officials who does a lot of the statistical work. And yeah, they're serious people, and they're basically doing statistical work. They're not propagandizing. The group that propagandizes is the government media office. But again, the Ministry of Health literally contradicted their estimate, as I said.
Yeah.
They said, no, it's actually much lower than the 70%. Now, they didn't say it like in a provocative way.
I actually kind of remember when that happened, yeah.
They didn't say it in a provocative way, a confrontational way, but they were asked by a journalist, hey, this number keeps being thrown around. Is it right? And they said no.
Yeah.
Because people were like, wait, that's inconsistent, because there was an inconsistency what the Ministry of Health was saying and the government media office was saying. So yeah, I mean, no, they're reliable. They're a serious group.
So based on your research, you believe 4 to 5% of the population has been killed?
Yeah, I think about 100,000 people in terms of the pre-war population have been killed. Let me make a one point though about deaths. So the big problem that we focus on is deflation of the death toll. People who say it's the Ministry of Health is overcounting or that it's comprehensive, which it isn't, right? They're undercounting. But there also are folks who, based on historical estimates, right? Historical estimates of like average ratios of violent to natural deaths. These folks have said, oh, there must be hundreds of thousands killed, right? So, because the idea is if you have 90 or 100,000 violent deaths, you're surely going to have 200, 300, 400,000 indirect deaths. There's actually a letter in the Lancet, not to be confused with the study I just cited, but there was a letter in the Lancet in 2024 which predicted far more deaths than had been reported at the time because of an assumption that they're going to be several times the number of natural deaths. But look, all of my open source research shows that natural deaths are at a very low level from what we'd expect.
You mean like indirect deaths?
Yeah,
from
exactly.
bombing campaign, yeah.
Exactly. No, indirect deaths, like you get sick because you're in a tent, or you don't have access to medication and so on. It's been remarkably low. And that's changing now, which we can talk about with the starvation. But let's say until the ceasefire, remarkably low. And I think the reason was that the UN system was so efficient. It was, I feel like by calling the UN so much, I'm committing some heresy against libertarians. But I don't know if everyone's a libertarian listening, but regardless, it's just a fact. The UN system was remarkably efficient. Gaza had, since 2007, been under a blockade, and there were 400. They knew how to distribute aid to people. Right. This was even by regional standards, was a completely impoverished area. But, and this is something the Israel people bring up, the pro-Israel people bring up, it actually wasn't that bad in terms of public health standards. Pretty good, even. Like life expectancy was in the 70s, higher than Egypt, right? Even though Gaza's way poorer than Egypt, way higher unemployment because of the blockade. Because of all the aid and the really efficient aid system, people got food, people got medicine, and free healthcare through UNRWA too. So this system, insofar as it was able to function the first couple of years of the war, was able to prevent a huge number of deaths. And it's really one of the reasons why natural deaths are going to be, at least for the first couple of years, so low. But sadly, the prolonging of the war and the replacement of the UN system with the kind of evangelical Christian Zionist so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation or Fund, whatever it's called, Fund would be more apt. Sadly, this is changing this year dramatically. It's not just the people who've starved to death. It's going to be far more than that, sadly, because even people who don't starve to death are going to be much more likely to die of diseases, right? Because of malnourishment. So, and I'm sad to say, I've also confirmed by my conversations with the Ministry of Health people who, by the way, also confirmed natural deaths are much lower than people have reported, right? Than people have speculated. Again, a strange thing to say if you're trying to inflate. Why would you say, oh no, they're much lower than way lower than what these people are saying, like hundreds of thousands? No, way lower. Strange way to inflate, but it's way up this year. Again, it's not what they're reporting publicly. First of all, they're undercounting starvation deaths too.
When they say it, it's what hospitals recorded.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. They're undercounting starvation deaths too. Because some people are in hospitals or they haven't gotten a judicial certificate yet. So that's one thing. But the more important thing is that you're going to have thousands and thousands of people, optimistically, sadly. There would be in the thousands. It's very optimistic, probably higher, but tens of thousands, but you're gonna have thousands and thousands of people die of diseases that would not have died in 2024 from the same diseases because they weren't malnourished. So this is all a horror right now. And it's really amazing what the UN system did. I mean, these people last year were living in tents, right? Overwhelming majority were living in tents. But I guess if you just are really efficient at distributing food, medicine, and vaccinations to people, as the UN system was, even with these horrific sanitation, these unhygienic living conditions, you can keep folks alive. But sadly, this is changing this year for no reason. There was no reason to do this. But yeah. But and also here's another thing. Israel, even though Israel doesn't care about the Palestinians, they should be really grateful for the UN. And here's why. If there were if you didn't have this remarkable aid system in Gaza, if there were a more typical ratio of natural to violent deaths, you'd have had like 400,000 people killed. And you'd actually have a situation where nobody could dispute this was genocide, right? If they had killed more than 1 out of 6 of the people in 22 months. It would be like that. It would be like that if you didn't have this remarkable aid system, right?
I think that's part of the strategy why they wanted to destroy UNRWA in Gaza, I think that's probably why part of the reason was because they were good at keeping the Palestinians fed and alive.
Well, they've been deemed as Hamas. They're basically Hamas, basically. As we know, the Mahmoud Khalil guy worked for UNRWA or did like something with them, right? And that guy's a terrorist, man. He's a pro-Hamas terrorist. That's why we got to get him out of America. Didn't work, but we can try again, maybe. Try to get him out of America because he's Hamas terrorist. You know what I'm saying? Here we go. So are those amputated children. They're also Hamas terrorists. All right, here we go.
When we were talking about earlier, you said that all these things that they claim are, they cite security justifications for are really just excuses to kill civilians. Right. I think that is the case with this Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, the GHF, as the whistleblower, Tony Aguilar, former U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel, Green Beret, has said that, they're designed. One thing he said that stood out to me, he says the media coverage, they say that the GHF sites have turned into death traps. He says, no, they were designed to be death traps, designed to send people through these areas that are open fire kill zones, essentially. And the fact that some of the things he said in the interviews, like the fact that they're using live ammunition for crowd control.
Yeah, there have been people, doctors, Palestinians, talk about tanks, and I don't know, not the GHF using tanks, but in terms of people who are seeking aid, unarmed civilians, the Israelis have used tanks and artillery as forms of
and they've even admitted that.
Unbelievably.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, the Haaretz, they talked about it, and I have to say, a friend of mine, a dear friend of mine, who's in Gaza right now, and hopefully we'll be getting out soon. I think we've managed to pull that off, honestly, which is really cool if it happens. But knock on wood. But Hiba, a friend of mine who she wrote an article recently for Dropset where she talked about something which she told me many months ago, and I was told I was lying, of course, which I wasn't. Where her 15-year-old unarmed cousin was shot in the head by the IDF while he was seeking 14-year-old actually. 14-year-old unarmed cousin was shot in the head while he was seeking aid. Of course, family felt horrific that they allowed him to. This is early on in the so-called GHF process. So no, she's not lying. One of my research team for AOAV had a relative who I don't want to be too specific. I just won't mention that because I'm not entirely sure I remember all the details of it. But Hiba.
By the way, sorry to cut him off in the middle of the story. It's just for people that are like, well, what if they're lying to us? What if there's nothing really terrible going on over there? Why risk it? Just say, yo, stop what you're doing, allow investigators in, allow journalists in, and allow them to go full-scale forensics over the entire area. All of it. From digital recordings that are being posted on the internet to actual on-the-ground forensics. Are you willing to, what if they're lying? The fuck would you risk that for? Kidding me? And people that just adopt that, like, oh, they're lying based on some influencer, some content creator saying that they're lying. That's not good enough, guys. Sorry. I'm not saying anyone like that watches my videos would be thinking that. I'm just saying, like come on. It's getting like ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's like the end result, I'm telling you right now, is the Nuremberg fucking trials. I don't think people realize that. You're going to see some Nuremberg trial shit, bro. Because at some point, people are going to really be like, all right, we can't allow this to happen. This is too much. And you're going to see some of these officials on the fucking stand having to explain the fucking crimes that they committed. I'm sorry, but I mean, I could be wrong. Then we live in a crazier world than I realize. If that's the case, this can happen. Everyone's seeing it on the internet. Everyone's fucking seeing it. If that can happen and then nothing happens afterwards, that'd be crazy, bro. I mean, you have actual nations talking about that. Like, yo, Look what they're fucking doing over here. We can't stand with us.
Yeah, I don't know, bro.
It's world leaders to dumb fuck on the internet, all saying the same thing. That's what I'm saying.
Right, but I mean, it's definitely ramped up recently, but it's been going on for a long fucking time. So I don't know
Not
why
like
all
this.
of a sudden.
This is like straight up extermination. They are straight up doing that. Versus before it was like in pockets where they'd kick someone out of their house or bomb a house or knock a house over. This is on a mass scale. A mass scale. A purposeful. Every type of death you can think of is happening over there. In mass. From bullets to bombs to starvation to disease. All of it. And people are like catching footage of the like aerial shots. Like they're like, how are they going to explain that when it's all said and done? Because at some point they're gonna have to move motherfuckers out of here, right? Either they kill more and more people, or they expel them. According to this guy, they were working on a deal with Sudan to move Palestinians there. And once again, it's not just dumb fuck or me on the fucking internet. It's nations are saying this now.
Well, like who?
Oh my God. The UK, Ireland, Canada, Mexico, almost all Africa. Middle East keeps their fucking mouth shut because, you know, they know. China, it's big nations are saying, it's not just random Cambodia over there. It's like actual big nations are saying these things. And most importantly, the people of big nations like in the US, in Canada, in the UK, in Europe, in France, all over that fucking place. The citizens don't know what's going on. Australia just did like a giant march where they had like 100,000 fucking people clogging up fucking traffic, marching about this.
Well, but who's gonna fucking hold the U.S. accountable? All those countries are allies.
They might not hold the US accountable. It might be certain names from Israel that might be they'll get their Nuremberg trial. Netanyahu, Smoltrich, Gavir, other people in that administration. There's a
Well, but
good
the
chance.
U.S. would have to let that happen.
Yeah, true.
So who's gonna make the plea to J.D. Vance when he's president, or whoever?
Trump can't be president forever. And he's already lost favor with his fans. Not all of them, but enough of them. He lost a pretty good amount of favor, and Israel's not so popular right now. And that's on both sides of the fucking aisle. Your mainstream Democrat is openly criticizing Israel now at this point. Not the politicians, but like the actual voters for these guys. Republicans, they're more protective, but the populace underneath them are heavily criticizing Israel. Maybe with stupid reason behind it, but they're doing that. I mean, I don't see how it doesn't end up in. Once again, it could be in 5 years or 80 years, but someone's going to acknowledge that this thing is happening right now.
I think it's wishful. I don't know.
It's you can't avoid it. We have it all recorded on our fucking phones. You can't avoid it.
I mean, yeah, but I feel like they can't avoid it. So I don't know.
Like something like I don't know, but it's too much. It's too much. It's everywhere. This guy on the right was like he followed more of the mainstream line of things according to him. He's like, at a certain point, I can't avoid it now. He's like, you know what? I'm an academic. All right, these stupid guys making claims on the internet. Let me investigate this. Investigates. He's like, well, it is that bad. Okay. And you have more and more guys like that are quote unquote academics all saying things too. It's going to be in your colleges. It's going to be amongst your population. It's going to be all over the fucking place. It'll be unavoidable. Especially when you get the end results. let's just be honest. We're seeing a picture of what's happening versus what's actually happening, especially according to this Tony Aguilar guy, where he's like, yeah, wait until they find out what's happening in Gaza City, where you can smell death, dead bodies in the air. What's going to happen then when people get footage of that? Remember, they keep journalists out of Gaza, right? They don't allow outside journalists to enter. And the journalists that are Palestinian that live there, they're killing them en masse. They passed Vietnam, I believe, of number of journalists killed in a fucking war. And how long was Vietnam being fought for? Years and years? This shit's not even 2 years old. Yeah, it's not. I'm telling you right now. Someone's going to get the after shots of things. Like, well, all right, this quote-unquote war is over. Let's go take pictures of it. And it's like, whoa, what the fuck?
I mean, I fucking hope so, but seems unlikely.
We're seeing a snapshot of things. I'm telling you, the images are going to be gruesome.
Yeah, I mean, they're already really bad. Yeah.
They're already really bad, but like, imagine when they're done.
Yeah.
It's going to be extra gruesome. And all right, let's keep playing this. Here we go.
Boy V had a relative who I don't want to be too specific. I just won't mention that because I'm not entirely sure I remember all the details of it. But Heba and another person, I'll say, that I know personally, have had relatives shot intentionally by the IDF while seeking aid. And they're obviously like Heba's family is, obviously by our standards they'd be conservative, but they're quite liberal for Gaza. Like they sent her to a co-ed school, like with some boys and girls who were in high school together. They're not Hamas, right? Mm-hmm. And yet they shot her 14-year-old cousin in the head. So no, it's as you say, you can always.
Sorry, just to add, the UN is going over this. Doctors that are not from Gaza or Palestine, that find their way in there, are saying things to the worldwide media. Less so in the U.S., although they are being presented in the U.S. as well. But they're all saying it. The celebrity personalities are all saying it too. This is not a go-away thing. It's just not. I'm sorry. You have Piers fucking Morgan, when you have Louis Theroux, one of their biggest, famous documentarians. It's too much. BBC hosting documentaries to their news anchors, all questioning what's that. Like, yo, what the fuck is this? When you have CNN sneaking on a Jordanian plane to get aerial footage of an area, and they're seeing nothing but piles of concrete dust. And once again, those are just snapshots.
Was that not happening in Afghanistan?
No, it was not happening in Afghanistan. Massive houses being bulldozed and flattened. No. Random shellings of empty no. I'm sure there may be in pockets there's certain things, but the U.S. didn't bring in bulldozers. Okay, let's knock down their houses once we're done killing everyone. That was not happening. Although there was plenty of atrocities, for sure. Plenty of atrocities. But not like this, where it's like, it looks like premeditated extermination. That's what it looks like. And everyone's picking up, I'm sorry, every news broadcast, even if the mainstream is a little bit more tacit about it, or a little more, they try to make it seem less crazy as it actually is. Even their rhetoric is still crazy. It's still like, this is fucking nuts. But this is, yeah. We'll see, though. We'll see. Here we go.
Always find an excuse. This is crowd control. There's always an excuse. But at some point, you have to just say, no, this looks like intentionally killing civilians.
Yeah,
why is the rate higher than any other war of the whole century in terms of the percentage of the population killed? Why is the percentage of women and children killed so much higher than everywhere else? You have to just say at some point, no, I don't buy this. Mm-hmm. And also, I have to say, a lot of people, and this frustrates me because I thought, again, if I go into my kind of narrative, I really thought that the West was superior in terms of human rights, in terms of that even had it extended to foreign policy and adherence to laws of war and so forth. And I mean, the excuses people have, and intellectuals too, have made for this is unbelievable. I mean, imagine if the Chinese invaded Taiwan and they were using tanks and artillery, and there were like, hundreds or many dozens of Taiwanese who'd spoken to the media and said, yeah, they just kill us at these aid sites. There's like massacres every day. First of all, everyone would call it murder. Nobody would have any doubt, right?
Mm-hmm.
There wouldn't be any discourse about whether this is murder or not, or that they did Where's Daddy. There'd be no discourse of whether that's intentional killing or not. And we'd probably threaten, we'd call them Hitler and so on. So it's, but yet if it's a friendly state, we don't care. Mm-hmm. And I find that very disappointing.
Support it and fund it.
The government.
Yeah, and I mean, again with the aid massacres, a number that you mentioned. Now the death toll is almost 2,000. It's like 1,800 something.
Yeah,
Palestinians who have been killed going out to get food since the end of May. And as I understand it, that's mostly people killed near GHF sites, but also people trying to reach UN aid trucks. Yeah. And since they've let a few more trucks in, we've seen that kind of death toll rising. And then the number of injured is like 14,000. And I remember you mentioned when the casualties were like 10,000, just based on the rough number of a 2 million population of 2 million. That means 1 in 200 people in Gaza.
Yeah, have been injured or killed. Not killed, but yes, injured or some people misunderstood what I meant by casualty. I actually specified injured, but some people misunderstood nevertheless. But no, killed or injured, seeking aid. It's unbelievable. I mean, it's that's like what you would expect from like a war that had gone on for a year, like a whole country in the war zone, not like this alleged aid fund,
And then this goes on, so I saw today Mike Huckabee did an interview with the Times of Israel.
Yeah,
it was kind of amazing because the interviewer, I think it was David Horowitz, who, an Israeli, seems pretty pro, Israel and everything. He was like trying to.
I'm not going to forget. Let me remind you of that too. The Israeli people, they're going to find out, and so a lot of them are finding out what's happening over there, and they're going to hold those motherfuckers to it. Like I'm telling you, like too much. But here we go.
Like a whole country in the war zone, not like this alleged aid fund,
And then this goes on, so I saw today Mike Huckabee did an interview with the Times of Israel.
Yeah,
it was kind of amazing because the interviewer, I think it was David Horowitz, who, an Israeli, seems pretty pro, Israel and everything. He was like trying to get Huckabee to say one bad thing about Israel's conduct in Gaza, and he couldn't. And at one point he said, don't you think they should use non-lethal forms of crowd control? And Huckabee said, what do you expect them to do? Call the Girl Scouts in or something like that? Like, this is evil what's happening.
It really is.
This really is a different level. And as someone who for many years has been very critical of U.S. foreign policy and our wars and interventions, I mean, this is like just a completely different level.
Yeah, it is, and I think it's important to point that out because, not to whitewash the United States and completely unjust war. And look, with Iraq, all of the 200,000 civilians who were violently killed, right? All of them are on the U.S. for starting the war. So even the ones killed by ISIS or Hezbollah or whatever, they're all in the U.S. for starting an unjust war. So it isn't that we don't have responsibility for this, but like if you look at the conduct of the military and the policy that points to, no, there's the only war you could compare this to recently is Vietnam. And even that I think is questionable. Although obviously the U.S. killed a lot more people. There's went on for many years, much larger theater of war, much stronger armaments the other side. Like if you look, I'm talking about like the rules of engagement though. I think that this is
it's like Vietnam. I mean, I have friends who were in the military who were in Iraq, Afghanistan, and we work with people because the most valuable kind of anti-war activists I think are veterans. Yeah. And I've heard stories of them taking great lengths to avoid, putting themselves in danger to avoid civilian casualties. And overall, the war was a crime, was unjust. The war in Iraq. We're talking. It was
the motive is different too. I think Iraq, I think Israel's a part of it. Why we did it, but I think the biggest motive was like kind of a neocolonialism. It was sort of like we wanted to make Iraq into like a westernized pro-America state, and we thought that would be good for our security, and we need to do something big after 9/11 to address a long-term issue of Islamic extremism. I think that was the logic. I don't believe that these people were afraid of being attacked, even if they believe the WMD thing. I always thought was a silly debate, because whether they believed it or not, because obviously they didn't have it, but because even if they believe they had WMD, like of course Iraq isn't a threat, even if they have it. Like, North Korea isn't a threat to the United States right now, right? It's a threat to its people. It's a threat to South Korea potentially, but it's not a threat to the United States. So they didn't believe it was defensive. But again, like a neo-colonial motive, which I think was there for sure, is not the same as let's try to destroy Gaza. And again, that's the statement over and over again from the officials. So it's funny how people on our side of this issue are called so radical when we're like literally quoting ministers and generals and public opinion in Israel.
It's good. It's all over the internet. It's everywhere. The Smoltrich and Gavir saying these things. They're like, yeah, we're going to just destroy these people. We're going to destroy them and expel them. It's like, yeah, that's going to be on the internet. I don't know who told these guys that they're, I guess, untouchable or something. But first of all, your own people are going to wreck your shit. At some point, I expect that to happen. And the rest of the world's going to look at you as like, yeah, don't come to our countries. Otherwise, you'll get arrested. Except for maybe the U.S. I'm just saying. And even when Gavir was in America, people were like hounding this fool, shitting on him. Fuck you, war criminal, right? Imagine that times 10 when people see like what's even more of what's happening over there. But here we go.
I mean, I don't think I'd have to look at the polls, but I don't think after 9/11, most Americans would have said there's no innocence in Afghanistan. I don't think most Americans would have said that. Most Israelis do. Right?
Yeah, I remember, growing up, because I was a young kid when 9/11 happened. I lived on Long Island, a suburb of New York, and I know people who died. And, I heard some pretty heinous things from people over the years. But yeah, what you see, nobody was ever so public about it that we see.
No, there was definitely a proportion of the public. I bet you it was significant. Like if that were ever, it should have been polled. But I bet you a good chunk of the right had genocidal views. But if you look at the president Bush, who again, war criminal, did this completely unjust war in Iraq. I mean, he didn't. Colin Powell, Rumsfeld, Cheney. These people were not talking about human beasts, and we need to like remove the Iraqis to like turn this into the Riviera. It was like they wanted to transform the society because they thought it would be in our interests, and they probably thought in the back of their head, hey, it'll be better for them too. And they were so arrogant, I think, by like recent American military successes in the first Gulf War and in Yugoslavia and in Kosovo, that I think they thought that they would be relatively low casualty affair, and then hey, we're the West, we're going to make this country better. And I think they actually probably believed their own propaganda to some extent, but they definitely didn't believe that about liberators and so on. But they definitely didn't believe that it was defense. They didn't believe that. That was a lie.
Yeah.
I think the administration, if they can get away with what they're doing in Gaza right now, I think the Bush administration, Obama, Trump, Biden, these guys would do the same thing if they can get away with it. But I think Americans have more of a sense of being the good guys or the heroes, and there's no real way to to go about that if you're seeing the images out of Gaza and say you're the good guy. It's not there. I think you can't do that with that. So that's just my opinion of these people, these devil worshipping motherfuckers like Bush and Trump and Obama. But all right, here we go.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of hubris there. But so to wrap this up, I just want to close with, I mean, this is a genocide that's happening in Gaza. I think the fact that you even have people, this stuff with the starvation, saying, oh, these kids are all have pre-medical, pre-existing medical conditions, so it's no big deal.
It's disturbing.
It's like
very disturbing.
Yeah, it's monstrous on kind of a new level, and I think it's very disturbing that this is like mainstream discourse, that conversations are even happening.
Right. It's a shock to my worldview, because I wouldn't have thought this level of depravity, which is obviously in any famine, when you're talking about the first several hundred deaths by starvation, by physical starvation, you're going to have a large overrepresentation of the very vulnerable. So we're talking about the poor, the very poor, people who were like kind of on the fringe socially. I've heard about these kind of folks. Like there's a woman who, again, I really, my friend Heba is really great. I'm thinking about her a lot with respect to Gaza. She's there right now. There's a lady in her neighborhood who she and her family have helped, but she was vulnerable to starvation because a lot of families died and has a child with special needs. So like the very poor, people with pre-existing conditions, very young, these are the people vulnerable to starvation. And the Israeli, it's absurd though, because like if you look at the data in Gaza in 2022, I actually talked to the minister, got a document for this Ministry of Health. They actually didn't record a single death by starvation in 2022. So like there's zero, and yet there's hundreds now. There are tons of people with pre-existing conditions in 2022, right?
Yeah.
In fact, many of these same kids, they weren't emaciated. Like you can have cerebral palsy and live a really productive life. Like one of my best friends from college, she was in a wheelchair, but she was otherwise like really smart. We debated politics and so on all the time. We got into fights, like college kid stuff. So we were like just like regular friend,
I saw
and this is not she didn't just naturally starve to death. Like that's not what happens. They're starving to death because of this policy, and the people who starve more quickly, right? Are people like this. So
I saw the State of Israel's official X account tweeted out a picture of a guy who was dead, starved to death. And it said fake news on it, and it said, 41-year-old so-and-so was reported that he starved to death, but he really had diabetes and he wasn't being treated for it. And that's what killed him. And it's just like, what? How is that? This is your propaganda?
Also, there have been people. I found this so distasteful. It's important to do, but it's so distasteful. And it's basically what, if you were to drop, what would a country that's trying to sound like the good guys while committing a genocide say? And it's like stuff like this. Like, the emaciated child who's like starving to death because we blocked all food imports for 2.5 months and then like set up this fake aid organization to replace this incredibly effective one. That doesn't count because he has cerebral palsy and they starve too easily. Or I think maybe are they trying to say like people just naturally starve to death who have cerebral palsy?
That's kind of what some people seem to imply.
Again, like meet someone who has cerebral palsy. Like they can live good lives, but
so.
All right. There's 10 minutes left, but probably leave it there. Obviously, I'll post the entire video for people to watch on their own. I think this is one of the most, for me at least, one of the most interesting videos I've seen about this topic. And just confirm, once again, I don't know if the guy's legit or not, but the words he's saying does confirm what I was suspecting a while ago about this. Because, once again, like something like the Holocaust, right? The numbers are not going to be the same because, first of all, originally only like 2-point-something million people living in Gaza, right? So obviously the total numbers can't add up to the Holocaust, obviously. What I'd look more at is the intention of the person committing the crime. And it looks like straight up extermination. It's taking someone and saying they're lesser of a human, thus I get to treat them like this. And in some ways, it actually does feel like it's more brazen. Like they're almost more brazen. Like there's more eyes on it because of the internet existing. They say certain things to their own people. They say crazy ass shit. Like, we need to get them out of here. It's okay to kill them. All that stuff. They say that like openly over there on their news media. Even the Nazis had to be like a little bit more quiet and hide it a little bit better, right? Like IBM had to sneak in through the back door and secretly help and fund these motherfuckers, like kind of quietly. But right now, it's just so blatantly brazen. It's incredible, absolutely incredible. And that's why I'll straight up call it like, this is a Holocaust. It is trying to mass exterminate people and also ethnically cleanse them at the same time. Get them out of here. Make them move somewhere. Strike a deal with Sudan. Send them over there. Make a deal with Libya, as were reports from the White House several months ago. As a possibility. Yeah, it's just brazen in your face. And yeah, once again, I can't say I know people will be held to account, but it just looks like that. It looks too big of a thing for motherfuckers to not get in trouble for this. And it's too much in our faces. It's too much there. But yeah, like I was saying, interesting fucking video. I'm gonna look more into this guy, this Matthew Cockerill. Pause. I'll definitely look more into it. And I suggest watching more Antiwar.com videos, especially Dave DeCamp stuff, in my humble opinion. For me, he's like I could just put the channel on and just listen to what's being reported and said on there. And if you follow it, you'll see daily what's happening over there. It's like 100 per day just dying over there. Then with the new aid site stuff, it's shooting fish in a barrel. It's ridiculous. I played the clip in my Mark Levin video where, the stupid little Walking Dead music was playing, but that's a lot of people having to rush just to desperately get some food. And the people controlling it, controlling the aid sites, are Israel and the U.S. Straight up. And yeah, they're, to me, I think in reality, just equally culpable for the crime that's being committed. Equally. They truly are. It is absolutely absurd. And yes, the crime dates back to the Biden administration, by the way. It's a continuous crime by the U.S. from when this thing started. I mean, you can go way before that too, but I'm saying in the 2023 of October, that's when it was massive killings, massive human rights violations. That's when that shit really started. And yeah, it carried went from Biden to Trump nothing happened, without a fucking hiccup. So yeah, Americans, you should be looking at your government quite seriously. And if there was some sort of Nuremberg trial thing that happens as a result, there should be plenty of U.S. personnel on that fucking thing. Their day in court, if you will. But I will leave it there. There's your video. Please subscribe if you feel like. Comment, agree or disagree. Say what you want. Post information. Post a video for me to react to. Do all of it. All of it's very much appreciated. Don't forget to check out the links in the description box, from the donations to charities to also the Discord link. Please check them all out, if you will. And with all that said, please give this video a thumbs down.